Hello YouTubers, I'm back with a brand new video, and instead of doing a fig review today, we are going to talk about the immortal Hulk Hogan. Um, Man, of course, I think most everyone knows the news. Hulk Hogan passed away on Thursday from cardiac arrest, and it has it's just caused a wave of reflection. Hulk Hogan, without question, the biggest wrestling star in the history of the business, at least in of American wrestling, and really on a worldwide basis, biggest star. You can argue, Dwayne Rock Johnson. Johnson is definitely, due to his success in the movies over, the last several years. But just from specifically becoming a pop culture icon through professional wrestling and to professional wrestling fans, Hulk Hogan is the greatest of all time, and there is no comparison. He set the table, he set the foundation for the modern WWE that Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena, Rock, and others have picked, have carried on. But it's no exaggeration to say that without Hulk Hogan, professional wrestling would be so different today, and possibly not for the better. He is without a doubt the most important single performer in the history of the WWF, WWF, and WWE, the entire McMahon, wrestling, empire that started back with Vince's father, Vincent J. McMahon, and he changed the history when Vince McMahon decided to take the WWF at the time, from a Northeast-based promotion to make it a national promotion, a national expansion that started in 1984. He chose Hulk as the guy to lead the charge, and it changed the foundation of wrestling. And Hogan is one of the few people in the history of the wrestling business, and you can, whether it be promoter or wrestlers, there are probably no more than, I would say, 10 to 15 people, and this is just from my knowledge, but from, I would say there are 10 to 15 people where if you take them out of professional wrestling, as in if they were not in the wrestling business, the business would be incredibly different. Hogan's one of those few people, and it may be closer to 10 people, but I mean, the man is, he was the man. And another thing too, which a friend of mine talked about, Dave Meltzer actually talked about it on one of his podcasts, and it was such a great point, is that Hulk Hogan was the catalyst for the two biggest boom periods in North American professional wrestling history. When you look back at the 80s, the golden age of WWF, and the 80s wrestling boom, he was a catalyst for that. Then, and that was the catalyst, that was, the catalyst for the national expansion, the, the rise of WrestleMania, just the rise of the WWF in general in the 80s. He laid the groundwork for that. He was a catalyst by far. And then you go to 1996, the creation of the New World Order. And again, the catalyst for the spark that, or the catalyst that starts the second boom period, where you have WCW on top, defeating WWE in the ratings, and then because of how hot the NWO was, Vince McMahon had to create and push stars such as Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, guys that really ushered in the current era of wrestling we're in right now. So again, Hogan, but it's all Hogan. Had any other person been the third man in the NWO along with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, it doesn't work. And the course of wrestling history is changed again. And did Hulk have his faults? Of course. And not just from what you've seen a lot of in the on social media and online lately. Hogan, he made some bad decisions. As with any human, he's made bad decisions. He said some racial things that definitely alienated him from a large portion of the fan base and just the general public. And even in professional wrestling, which a lot of people, if you're not a wrestling fan, you do not know, but Hogan in wrestling, Hogan definitely had his, as I would call, political machinations. Hogan was definitely, he did a lot of things to maybe curtail certain careers and to cool off guys who had steam. And a big part of WCW's, and actually some of this stuff was even back in WWE in the early 90s, but even a lot of what led to a lot of the, I would say, a lot of the collective behavior that led to the downfall of WCW was because of people like Hulk Hogan, people who didn't want to give up those spots, people who were, the established guard, established main event clique who didn't want younger talent to rise to the top. And you have to talk about that aspect too. But, Hogan has definitely, you definitely have seen both sides, and his death has just brought a wave of reflection and emotions from all over the spectrum. And again, just the coverage alone has been massive. He was he was the reason why so many fans, such as myself, are into wrestling to this day. So many people in the media, people who were other wrestlers. My gosh, he influenced so many wrestlers, many legends of the business. For an example, Sting were directly influenced to get into wrestling because of Hulk Hogan. So his influence is so vast. You would probably have to spend, if it was like a podcast, you could do a weekly podcast, 52 episodes a year, just to cover the influence he's had on professional wrestling. And it's just it's something. And I truthfully and Mick Foley actually stated it pretty well too in an interview I saw, that Hulk Hogan to me never aged. He never as like a Ric Flair or other older wrestlers, where you can tell they really look different from how they looked even a decade, 15, 20 years ago, nonetheless in their prime. But Hogan, for the most part, he always looked the same. He always had the bandana, the mustache, the good physique, even until even until a few weeks, a couple of months ago. He was on the Raw Netflix debut back in January looking, pretty fit. And I just honestly expected Hogan to pass away maybe when I was in my 50s, because he would have been about 80-ish by that point. I guess in his maybe early mid 80s. I'm 39 right now, and I just didn't picture Hogan dying at 71. It's, even though 71 is a pretty long life, it still feels pretty short. And yeah, this is by far, of any wrestling major news story in my lifetime, this is the biggest. This is bigger than the death of Owen Hart. This is bigger than the Chris Benoit murder-suicide, bigger than the death of WCW. Hulk Hogan's death is, without question, the biggest wrestling news story of my life right now. And it is just, it's something. It is, and just really, like I say, he is really responsible for the business being where it is. And he's really just, he laid the foundation that so many wrestlers, fans, other people in the business are enjoying and eating off of. A lot of what we see in just the professional wrestling landscape would not be how it is without Hulk Hogan. You can never erase that fact. You can never deny that. No matter how much bad things he's done in his personal life, you can never overstate the impact that he's had on professional wrestling. And without question, the biggest long-term drawing card in wrestling history. More people paid to see Hulk Hogan wrestle than any wrestler in history, in terms of just drawing consistent large crowds over a large period of time. And just all the memories from his feuds with Andre the Giant, Macho Man Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior, the NWO, the match with Goldberg in the Georgia Dome, since Goldberg's just retired recently, even thinking back to that. So many memories, and so many of the biggest memories of my life, or at least the first half of my life in professional wrestling, Hogan was a part of. Now that I think about it, Rockin' Hogan at WrestleMania 18, that was, man, it's just, what a legacy. And I do want to say something too, because there's been a lot of, and I talked to some of my friends about this, there's been a lot of, truthfully, there's been a lot of just a hate towards Hogan. It's been a lot of pettiness I've seen, a lot of and it's really mostly directed, from what I've seen, for the most part, directed at the racial comments that he made that were revealed publicly back in 19 not 19 back in I think it was 2015, because that's when, and long story short, there was a leaked sex tape that became public knowledge back in 2015, and within that tape there was footage, audio of Hogan making racial comments and using the N word, and yeah, not a good look. And as a matter of fact, after that, he was removed from the WWE Hall of Fame. They really disassociated with Hogan for a few years. And they bombed back into the fold. I think it was around maybe 2017, 2018, and that definitely altered his image without question. The sex tape stuff too, because that was just something you never really expected Hulk Hogan would be in, that kind of news or thing. But I just seen so many just hateful comments, and I do want to say one thing in that and I've told this to my friends, some of my wrestling boys, and I just feel that our current society puts such a premium on racism. And racism is what it is. It's not good. It's never been good. You should accept all people from all walks of life. You shouldn't be racist towards white people, racist towards black people. You shouldn't be racist towards or hateful towards Hispanics, towards Asians, towards any group of people. All people are made in God's image. All people deserve to be loved and treated with respect. And I feel that some of the comments that I've seen and posts I've seen are just, it's going a little too far. It's okay to disagree with Hogan and say that he wasn't a good person. We all have the right to free speech. But I also want you to keep in mind that we've all have, and I'm going to say myself, I can only speak for myself. I've done things, have said things, have done things that if a camera was around me or a voice recorder, there are some things that you probably wouldn't like about me. Some things that I've said or thought about that were definitely not appropriate, that weren't pleasing. And I really want us to, people as a whole, just in society, to really exercise grace and forgiveness. And it doesn't mean you agree with what the person did and condones it, but at the same time, Hulk Hogan was a human being. He has a family. He has a daughter. He has a son. He had a wife, of course, his ex-wife, Linda, but also had a current wife as well. And you just remember that they're grieving. They have lost. Someone has lost their father. Someone has lost their husband. And his friends too. Many friends in the business, black and white friends, people who Hulk Hogan impacted in a positive manner. And those are the things I want you to remember. And also remember the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I know a lot of times in this current era, we associate, if you're a wrestling fan, you associate John Cena with Make-A-Wish, because he's set the record for the most Make-A-Wish granted to Make-A-Wish kids, Make-A-Wish Foundation. But before Cena, that guy was Hogan. Hogan was the one who, regardless of his schedule, regardless of how many days he was on the road and crisscrossing from town to town, flight to flight, he was the one making kids' dreams come true, kids that had terminal cancer, kids who had illnesses that cannot be cured. He was that guy back in the 80s and 90s. So I want us all, yes, remember the bad, but also remember the good, because there was a lot of good about Hulk Hogan. And again, just exercise grace and think that if your loved one passed away, would you like to go online and see people posting hateful comments about them? Just ask yourself that question. And I think if we answer that question, and if we exercise a little more grace and a little more forgiveness, I just think we'll be an overall kinder, more loving country. And I just want to leave that, because I think that's one of the biggest takeaways I've seen that's one of the biggest points I want to get across with, the Hulk Hogan stuff. Yes, he did bad things. He was not a perfect person, but last I checked, no one walking on earth is perfect. Not a single one. And the earth will never be perfect until, I believe, Jesus Christ comes back. And again, doesn't excuse anything, but at the end of the day, Hulk Hogan was a flawed individual, but at the same time, he brought joy and happiness to a lot of people's lives, myself included. And I just want us to balance things out and just keep that balance in perspective when it comes to thinking about Hulk Hogan's legacy in professional wrestling. But wow, what a story. Hulk Hogan, dead at 71, without question, on the very short list of legitimate all-time great game changers in wrestling history and pop culture period. So again, rest in peace, Hulk Hogan. And I think that's all I have to say. I was going to do some Hogan figure reviews because I have a ton of unboxed Hogan figures, but I will get to those, in the coming week. But thank you for watching this video. I hope you all are having a great weekend, and I will talk to you again after a while. Peace.